All right, so let me tell you a little bit about the findings that we had. In our database, the students who were represented came from 90 different countries, spoke 55 different languages. The size of the programs ranged from 9 students in one rural school district that participated, to over 900. And the over 900 was Newcomer High School in Queens, New York. Some of you may know that one. Some served only refugees or mostly refugees. Some served mostly immigrants, and most of them had some sort of a mix going on. The 96% of the programs had SIFE students. So, you know, what you shared with me at the very beginning of this talk, that almost all of you had SIFE students, you're very much in keeping with what we found. And of course, most of the students were poor, as evidenced from their free and reduced price lunch status. We were able to receive information, participated in the survey from 63 different programs, and they were in 24 different states. Most of those states were California, New York, Texas, and North Carolina, surprisingly. Lots of newcomer students in North Carolina. And then in terms of the communities, again, this might be what you would expect. More than half of them were in urban settings. About a third of them were in the suburban situations, and then a few of the participating programs were in rural settings. The program level, some were just geared for the middle school students. Some were just geared for high school students. Some combined middle and high school at the same site. And some had separate sites for middle and high school. And sometimes the separate middle and high school sites had different program designs. So one of our case studies was like that, where they had 2 middle schools that did their own sort of thing, and then a high school that did a whole different thing. So very interesting. 60%, so 3 out of 5 of the programs were within a school physically, but then about 24% were at a separate site. And sometimes that was rented space. A former church basement in a few, like in Chicago, there was one like that. And sometimes it was just a former school, so that, if enrollment had gone down, I don't know where that's happening because it's not in the East, and there was a school building that was available, they might have a preschool in the building, they might have newcomer students in the building, and they divvied things up that way. And then 10 of the programs were a whole school, and several of those were the international schools in New York. The length of enrollment was not surprising. This was a shift from the study we did in the 90s, that there were so few that were less than 1 year. In the 90s, it was kind of like, I don't know what you want to say, let's give them 10 weeks of instruction, get them basic social school language, and then move them out. After NCLB and all of the testing and the other things that have been happening in terms of educational policies, more and more programs said, we need these kids. We need them for at least a year. And as you can see, about 2/3 of them are a year or a year plus. And we found that this was actually quite common in the programs in the recent years, that they looked at the students more individually. So if a student needed to be there for 18 months, they kept the student there for 18 months. So in some programs, for example, if you had those literate newcomers who were close to grade level, they might be there for 6 months, they might be there for a year, and then they would move on. But you had some of those SIFE students, a Somali refugee who shows up who's 17 years old, they might keep that student for a year and a half, a year plus summer, 2 years even, really depending on the needs of the student. Now, sometimes that came in contradiction with policies in the school district, because especially at high school, moving kids through and getting them graduated in 4 years, which is a little crazy. So they needed very strong advocates in the program administrators of these newcomer programs. The length of the daily program, as you can see, most of them were half day or more. More than 90% looked at that and really tried to create programs and courses for the students that would work on language development and content. Some of the ones, it was very interesting, when you peeled away the layers in the survey results, what is half day? Is it half day only for the main contents, and then the others, they wanted the students to integrate with other students, so they'd be in PE or they'd be in another elective? with native English speakers and with other students in the school. So that happened a lot. But some schools call that still a full-day program because they were carefully selecting which teachers those students went with if they went to PE or if they went to art or music, let's say. Almost, as I said here, yeah, 15% of the programs had some addition beyond what was in the school day. So it might be after school support specifically, maybe 2 days a week for the newcomer students to come and do some additional language development or some enrichment, or it might be a Saturday school program. So a number of the sites had Saturday school specifically for newcomer students. Most of the programs that participate in the database considered themselves ESL or ELD or sheltered English programs. Only a little over 10% considered themselves bilingual programs. The type of instruction, though, was interesting. Even though only about 12% considered themselves bilingual, 1/4 of the programs offered a native language literacy class or a native language arts course to some or all of their students. And that was, again, some of the flexibility that we saw. There's this wonderful program, middle school in Queens, where they had a track for the Spanish-speaking students and then a track for the students who spoke all the other native languages. So those with the Spanish-speaking had more bilingual program in their particular school, and then the ones had more of an ESL program. But there was interaction, several classes they would have together, their ESL class, for example, but then their content was organized. And that took a lot of flexibility, a lot of design over time by that program director who she told me 15 years to get it right. And again, it was based on the student population, the needs, and the resources that were available. The content type of instruction, so 2/3 of the program offered content instruction through English, and about 1/4 offered it through English or the native language, a little bit as PS 235 that I was, not PS, MS 235 that I was talking about in New York. And just a few offered content in the native language itself solely. Cross-cultural communication, specifically as part of their curriculum, was in about 2/3 of the program. Career ed, though, very few. Less than 15% offered some career or vocational education courses for the kids. And then about 50% had some type of intervention either to help them with study skills, learn how to take notes, learn about taking tests in the US, which blows away the minds of some of the students who have come from far afield, or reading intervention programs. So there were a variety of sites that had, and I saw this more in the middle schools, an extra period. Sometimes they called it a flex period at the end of the day, where all of their students had some flexibility for more of an intervention kind of work or more of an enrichment kind of work. And so they designed specific classes during that period of time for newcomers.